one of my deeper themes and deeper lessons of 2021 is like, I'm really not interested in trying to get people to understand me anymore. Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of Mixed Feelings. I'm your host, Kira Bria. Happy New Year. Today, I just wanted to kind of reflect on the lessons that I learned in 2021 and talk about my, I guess, sort of approach to 2022. Because, not to quote Kylie Jenner, but the year was a year of realizing things. Like, I will say 2021 was definitely one of my most painful years. Apart from 2020, like 2021 was kind of just as painful, but in a different way. But I could feel myself growing the entire time. I'm just realizing I didn't eat breakfast. We might have to address that later. Anyway, 2021, so many things happened for the plot and the development of the plot. I was in probably my most serious relationship and it ended. I moved out by myself for the first time ever. I got signed to one of the top modeling agencies in Toronto. Obviously, this whole content thing, parasocial relationship we have going on, that all started in, well, the seeds of, you know, the TikTok, the podcast, the YouTube have been planting for a while. I mean, I started my TikTok in 2020, the end of 2020. So TikTok very much happened in 2021. Like this platform that I have that I'm building and that I do hope to make really the biggest part of my career. Like, yes, I do many things, dance, yoga, model, a little bit of acting, but content along with writing, like I started writing this year and putting my essays on Patreon and people actually really resonating with them and like people writing long, page-long responses to what I wrote because it resonated so much with them. Like that all happened in 2021 and the idea for me to start writing a book happened in 2021. And the idea of, oh, you know what? I think I would actually be a really great writer. And I think this actually could really be my career. Both, you know, content, podcast, YouTube, writing, that all happened in 2021. The semblance of like who I really think I'm meant to be, who I want to be, really started coming together in the past year. And I wrote, so listen, I spent a lot of time alone in 2021. I mean, I feel like a lot of us did, but I started this note. I called it Lessons in Solitude. And whenever I just like had an idea or just like, you know, sometimes it's a revelation, sometimes it's a spiritual download, sometimes it's just something that you want to remember, I started this note and I wrote it down. And I think a lot of this is actually some pretty wise stuff. So I thought I would share it. I really thought, take this in. Up until last year, I really thought it was my personal responsibility to redirect the thoughts of everybody who disagreed with me. Because, and I think a lot of us have this belief when we're younger. I genuinely used to have the belief that if everybody was presented with the same information, the correct information, the stats, and the lived experiences of like, you know, regarding systems of oppression, basically. If everybody was presented the same information, then everybody would, you know, wake up and not be so ignorant. And I have since learned that is simply not the case. Ignorance runs deep, it runs in some people's blood, and people will be determined to misunderstand you. And it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you, and it is not your responsibility to educate those who refuse to be educated. It is not your responsibility to make people understand you, and I think this goes with one of my deeper themes and deeper lessons of 2021 is like, I'm really not interested in trying to get people to understand me anymore. I think up until that year, I was obsessed with that. I was obsessed with trying to get people to understand where I'm coming from. And now I am so disinterested in it that like I can't take it in friendships and potential romantic relationships. If somebody is asking me questions, like I'll give an example. Even if it's about like, if it's about content, if it's about dance, not to be like, you know what though? I'm not even gonna say not to be like hair flip, toot my own horn. It's not about tooting your own horn. And I think everybody can relate to this in a certain aspect. We all have things that are like part of our world that are so part of our world that you don't even know how to explain it in like quote unquote layman's terms, or like if we were talking in a magical sense, muggle terms. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when people ask me about a lot of things that I do that are creative and artistic, if that person themselves doesn't understand because they're coming from a really different world, sometimes the questions that they ask me are like painful for me to answer because it's so far removed from my understanding of myself and my life and the things that I do that they're asking about. So to give a really good example of this, if we're talking about dance, which is something that I've lived and breathed since I was 2 years old, I am now 23. I don't know life without dance, right? It's like air to me. And people will ask, what's your favorite song to dance to? That's a question I'm not answering. That's a question I'm like, your understanding of my world is so minuscule that you don't even understand why that question's like kind of insulting. You don't understand. And that's okay, but I am not interested any longer in taking off pieces of myself to make myself fit your idea of who I am or who I should be. I'm not interested in anymore. And I think a lot of it is because I've been blessed with this platform where I can put shit out, and the girls that get it, and the girls that don't. And that has been so freeing to me because having a TikTok, you really get to live see people misunderstand you for reasons that have nothing to do with you, and also want to grip onto you for reasons that have nothing to do with you. And so putting out your content can become freeing in the sense of like, you know, when I put out content that's about like my biracial experience, I expect 10% of people to get it and 90% of the comments to be bullshit. And people saying, you're white, why are you talking? Or you're black, why are you talking? Like people just telling me who I am and saying, shut up about this biracial shit. But most of the time when I'm putting out my mixed stuff, I know that there's a handful of little mixed girls who really needed to hear what I'm saying. And my message is for them. And I'm not interested in making the other 90% understand me anymore because A, it's impossible. B, it's a waste of my time and energy. C, who cares? Who cares? It's also kind of removing yourself from the outcome of your actions in the sense of like not in a bad way, but in a way of like, I have a message, I have a piece to say, and to a certain extent, what you do with that is actually none of my business. To a certain extent, what other people think of me is none of my business because most of the time it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with them. And that is probably one of my biggest lessons of this year. Another massive shift in my paradigm that happened this year. And I do think that this had a lot to do with my relationship, both starting and ending. I mean, it started in 2020. It was about a year long, ended in the middle of 2021. And I found that before/during the relationship, and I do say before, like this was my thought process probably my entire life, was that I was going to someday get married and have kids. And while I was like, you know, cool with the idea of adoption in addition to having my own like biological children, I still like really felt the need to have my own biological children and be married, even though I was like okay with the idea of the marriage ending, maybe getting divorced, maybe getting remarried, whatever. And this year, I think it's a combination of things that did this. I think it was my relationship ending and me really unpacking who I was in that relationship, as well as seeing a lot of discourse on TikTok and in the world about marriage and women in relationships and the unpaid labor of women in relationships and families. And now I no longer feel the need to get married or to have my own children. Would I still maybe do those things? Yeah. And I do think I will probably have my own children, but it's not a need in the same way that it used to be. It's kind of just like, if it happens, it happens. And I do really want to talk about this because I honestly feel like this conversation could free a lot of women from heteronormative ideologies, because I really want y'all to hear me on this, because I'm serious when I'm saying this could change your paradigm too. What I realized was, in my relationship, we had talked about getting married, which is crazy because I was 22, 23, but we had talked about marriage as if we were obviously going there. We were obviously going to have these kids, blah, blah, blah. And I started just picturing all the great ways that I could be a wife, and just all the things that I would be doing to make sure that I was the best wife and mother I could be. And just, I was so obsessed with this idea of building a home with this man and how I would support the family. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when the relationship ended, I realized, and this is part of me being a Pisces, but I do also think this is part of me being conditioned as a woman. I realized that in the relationship, I was very comfortable becoming whatever I needed to be, even though that might not necessarily be who me outside the relationship wants to be or has interest in being. Let me explain that in a better way. Even though when I am in, like, okay, I've said this before on this podcast, the astrology book that I have sitting over there that's this thick, the size of a massive Bible, says the Pisces woman is more likely out of any other woman in the zodiac to change herself to fit the image that her partner wants. Meaning, in that relationship, even though me now, outside of the relationship, I have really big ideas for myself in my career and what I want to say and what I want to do and how I want to change social narratives, yada yada. In that relationship, the biggest I was really dreaming was about who I could be as a wife and a mother. Because I am willing to change myself to fit the image that my partner wants when I'm in relationships. And I can't see it coming, and I can't see that it's happening to me. Or sometimes I can, but I can't do anything about it because I am just so mutable. I am just so moldable. And I am just so willing to mold to the structure that someone else has created. And that doesn't always have to be a bad thing, but it is something that you need to be aware of, because sometimes your goals could be very redirected by this situation. But also we need to understand that the need to feel what I realized was that the only reason I wanted to get married was because I felt it was a status symbol that would make me be taken more seriously. And that doesn't mean that I won't get married, but it just means if I do, it would just kind of be for fun. Can we really, really, really talk about what do you think we're really getting from marriage in a society like these days? Marriage, yes, there's legal benefits, but you could also, I've seen people who do domestic partnership, right? And they do it well. And I think you get similar legal benefits, blah, blah, blah. But in general, most of the point of getting married, the benefit of it is to society. You present as somebody who is deemed desirable, follows the status quo to some extent, is established, has a family name, possibly has a legacy, blah, blah, blah. All of these things that present you as credible to society. I realized I don't really fuck with that game. Do you know what I'm saying? Because what you want to start doing as you move through this world, there's a lot of games that you can participate in and play, but you also have to understand that you are perpetuating that narrative when you do that, right? So this goes for many things. This goes for marriage. This goes for heteronormativity. This goes for beauty standards and plastic surgery. There's a million different ways you can look at this. there are certain rules in the society. You get to decide if you fuck with them or not though, right? Like I can have the knowledge that being married might elevate the way people look at me and if they take me more seriously, but then I get to decide if I still want to play that game or not. And I think I didn't realize that I had that decision before, if that makes any sense. And I think part of it is like me elevating my brand and elevating my content, and now I feel that I have an identity that is worthy on my own, and I don't know why I'm crying. I don't think I would necessarily be elevated by marriage anymore. I don't think people would necessarily respect me more now. And I don't know if that has something to do with the fact that I've started kind of making a name for myself. But it probably does, right? It probably does. And now it's like, I think before, even like when I first started making my content, I think I felt that because my content was like super feminist and super whatever, that it made me even more credible that I did have a boyfriend. Because it was like, yeah, I'm a feminist and I can say all these things, but look, I still have a boyfriend and I can still exist as a desirable woman within society. And look, like I'm not this man hater, blah, 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 blah. And now it's like, I don't see it like that anymore. I think this past year has really showed me the truth about relationships versus the truth of being alone. Like a lot of people are in relationships and they're really unhappy, and a lot of people are in relationships and they're giving part of themselves away. And also, even just when I was in the relationship, even when it was good, I just remember realizing that my life wasn't better. It was just different. Like, yes, I really loved this person, but I wasn't happier. I wasn't. And then there were moments where I was. But in general, I was not happier being with someone. It was just different. You have different problems. You know what I mean? And I think that's another lesson is most things are not necessarily better or worse. It's just different problems. Like, and you hear that all the time when people talk about money, but obviously it's stupid because they're talking about money and you also need money to survive. But I think just it can also be applied to relationships. Like you're not necessarily happier a lot of the times in a relationship. Even if it is with a really good person, you still have those issues that you have to deal with within yourself. And those will always need to be addressed. Another really important lesson that I learned was what people think of you, specifically men, but people, has nothing to do with you. Obviously, I did a whole podcast on this, but it really changes your life when you really think about it. Every interaction that you have with people, their response to you is based on their own preconceived notions of, you know, whatever interactions they've had with somebody that you remind them of, A. B, how they feel they should be in relation to someone like you. Like it's all bullshit. It's all preconceived notions. And people have to do a lot of work on themselves in order to be in a space where they can respond to the authentic you with the authentic them. Only a really like present person can do that, you know what I mean? And most of us are not present most of the time. And obviously that's something I'm working on. That's why I meditate. That's why I do yoga. Yoga changed my life. In this past year, I started teaching it all the time. Like it's part of my every single day. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for the movement practices that I've always been involved in and that have created my whole life. Like everything that I do really does come from dance at the end of the day. Like, yes, I come on here and I talk on the internet and I write things, but it really, so many of my experiences have come from dance, and like even my activism first came from dance. And that's something that probably a lot of people don't even know. Like the first social justice-y thing you ever saw from me was a dance that I made in college that kind of put me along this path. And a lot of people probably don't even know that, but every single thing that I do has stemmed from dance. So I've always been grateful for that, and I will always be grateful for that. And just movement practice. I think a lot of people would benefit from finding a movement practice that really resonates with them, whether it be dance, yoga, lifting, whatever. I like to lift too, but movement makes me happy. I think it makes me happier than really anything. Like, I think if I didn't have movement, I don't know how I would be happy, because so much of your trauma and so much of your, people don't realize so much of your shit is locked in your body. Like there's a book called The Body Keeps Score that I read a little bit of. I've been meaning to read. I borrowed it from a friend before the pandemic and didn't get to finish it. But I think people don't really understand how much of your trauma and how many of your issues are literally locked in your skeleton, and movement can help release it. And that's something that's just kind of become my creed this year. Like when I'm frustrated, when I'm angry, I need to move my body and literally get it out of me. Another super important thing that I learned this year that I think actually directs more where I'm going in 2022 and is my advice for your approach in 2022 is that controlling your narrative is the most important thing. Controlling your narrative is the most important thing. Meaning, no matter what field you're in, your goal should just be finding a way to control your narrative. And obviously, here's the thing, like, not everybody is gonna want to, you know, own their own shit, run their own shit. Some people are gonna be really stressed out by that idea, and that's totally fine. But I think there's ways you can control your narrative in any situation. But like for me, coming from dance and being a dancer, you have no control a lot of the time. Like, especially if we're talking about auditioning, you don't get to control what they tell you to wear and what vibe they tell you to get off and blah, 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 blah. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think you kind of have to figure out what kind of person you are and what you can handle. And it's not to say that I couldn't handle that. It's not to say that going through that is bad, but that was not my ideal, if that makes sense. Me being told what to do, personally for me, that will never be my ideal. And so for me, controlling my narrative looks like creating different ways that I can make money where I feel that I have control over my situation. So like, obviously, this YouTube channel, this podcast, I have utmost control. And ideally, to make this my main stream of income would be amazing, because then I have so much freedom and so much control over my life. Whereas if I were to only be making money based on other people's approval of me, that's kind of a sticky situation to be in for me. You know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, I do want to create my own shit and I do want to run my own shit. That's always been my desire. I've always liked creating more than being created on, always. And so you have to decide and figure out what kind of person you are. Because at the same time, if you don't want to be the one to create the framework, then don't be. Then don't be. You also have control over your narrative to decide what your narrative looks like. But I think just trying to consistently put yourself in the position to make decisions, that should be your approach. You know, you want to have the most control and agency over your life, over your work situation that you can. I also realize, like, you can work your entire life for something and something else might just come a little bit more naturally at the exact right time and be easier and more lucrative. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, with dance, like I've said, I've danced my entire life. And still, the cap for what you can make as a dancer is there. Like, there is a cap, right? Even if you, like, for example, I'll just tell you, I had a friend who worked on a Selena Gomez video, 2 days, $700 each day, right? Modeling, you can make thousands of dollars in one day. And it could be your first day on set. Do you know what I'm saying? Or you could get a brand deal and it could pay you $1,000. I mean, I know some people are obviously making 25 grand from a sponsored post. But the point is, you don't need to stick with what you've like worked so hard for if you see something else aligning in a different way. Like I think the past year and a half, a bit into 2022, made me realize like I'm not pressed to make my money from dance. I will always dance. I will always love to dance. But if there are other things that are more lucrative coming my way and feel more sustainable, like for example, this is why I'm saying content is really what I want to be my main source of income and main stream of income, because that gives me the most control over my narrative and my life, right? If I were to put all of my eggs in the basket of dance and force dance to support me, I don't love the idea of forcing your art to support you, because it does at the end of the day become a job and you do start to resent it. And I've seen it happen with so many professional dancers, how they kind of start to resent it and they don't love it in the same way. That being said, like dance is a significant part of my income at the moment, because most of what I do is teach dance, and I will always teach dance, and I will always love to teach dance. But I just kind of changed my mindset about the way I needed to make my money, because if you start to see other things are easier and lining up, just go with that. You need to have your life. You need to have time in your life that you get to schedule however you want. I think the people who are slaves to their work, this is what I'm saying about controlling your narrative. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's healthy. I think you want to try and find a way to work the least amount of time that you can and have so much time for yourself and investing in the things that you want to do that make you happy. The people who are like on the clock 24/7, I don't care how much money you're making, you have no agency over your life. You have no agency over your life. You need to invest in yourself in ways that you can control your own narrative. And that is my advice for 2022. Invest in yourself, find a way to make money from something that you like doing and that you have more control over than anything else. Don't sell your soul. Don't sell your soul to the corporations. I'm going to say it now. I don't think you need to be doing that. But if you like doing it, you know, like if you enjoy the work that you're doing, still I would say don't be a corporate slave, but find control. Find control. Take your life back. Take your narrative back. That is my advice for 2022. I hope that helped. I hope it helped. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. My Patreon will be linked down below. I posted a new short story up there about my mental health this week. Subscribe. Please like this video. Share it with your friends. I'm trying to build this channel to 10K. Yeah. You know where to find me, at Kira Bria on Instagram and on Twitter. Thank you so much for watching and or listening, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.